So, here's a strange question to start a video with. What was your first time experiencing racism? For me, it was when I was a 13-year-old kid walking through a college campus to get home from school, and some frat boy douchebag hit me with the classic drive-by N-word as he sped off down the street. Now, I didn't really understand what he had said at first, but my white friend, who was with me at the time, did hear him, and when I looked to ask what happened, his expression was just this for like 10 seconds. That was my first real-world experience with racism, and as far as racist experiences go, I feel like I got off pretty easy. I'm sure everyone watching this video has their own first experience with racism story, and I would love to hear about it in the comments. But even though that was my first time really feeling racism, it wasn't the first time I saw something racist. No. That actually happened when I was about 6 years old and woke up one Saturday morning to watch one of my favorite cartoons, Static Shock. Static Shock had a major impact on my impressionable young self back in the day. People like to downplay representation in art nowadays, but I do think there's something truly special and eye-opening about seeing people who look just like you do extraordinary things, whether they be fictional or non-fictional. Static Shock, or Virgil Hawkins, was the perfect role model for young black kids. He was smart, funny, genuine, strong-willed, equal parts cool and goofy, and at the end of the day, he always fought for what he believed was right. He made mistakes like everyone does, but he never let those mistakes define him, and he always tried his best to make up for them. All of that, and he could fly around and shoot electricity out of his hands, so bonus, I guess. There are a lot of standout episodes of Static Shock that I could talk about. The Christmas special episode, Frozen Out, is a great example of the show's ability to depict tragic characters with traumatic reasons for why they do the things that they do. Pretty much every episode with Rubber Band Man had some great messages in it, and I can't forget the anti-bullying episode titled Jimmy, which, to this day, is the only kids' cartoon I can think of that actually depicted a school shooting. I can't even say that Static Shock was ahead of its time with stuff like this, because no other cartoon was really doing things like this before, during, or after its run. Oh yeah, the episode with Shaquille O'Neal is just peak campy bullshit.
Right. I've got one word for you. Mouthwash.
But as great as all of those episodes and many others were, none of them stuck with me more than episode 8 titled Sons of Fathers. As was apt in the late 90s to early 2000s, Virgil was a black cartoon character with a white best friend. I don't know why interracial friendships were such a big thing back then, but as a black kid who had a white best friend growing up, I definitely saw the vision. Static's white best friend was named Richie, and can I just say that the Wigger community has been all over the place in the last couple decades. Like, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the Wigs were really riding high with Eminem, Limp Bizkit, and Cornrow Justin Timberlake ruling the music charts. Jamie Kennedy and Eminem again were making classic Wigger movies like Malibu's Most Wanted and 8 Mile. And of course, Jason White Chocolate Williams was making highlight after highlight in the NBA, giving white boys all over the globe hope that they didn't have to jump to be an NBA superstar. Nowadays, it feels like all the coolest Wiggers have already died untimely deaths due to drug overdoses, and most of the ones that are left are trading their faux black cards in to make country music and outdated pop punk, or simp for Taylor Swift. Anyway, I say all of that to say this. Richie has always been my favorite fictional Wigger, and no matter how cringy his dialogue can be in 2024, you can tell it all comes from a genuine and loving place, and he and Virgil's brother-like bond is one of my favorite aspects of the show. The episode begins with Richie and Virgil hanging out at Virgil's house and watching some TV. It's Virgil's sister who brings up the fact that Richie never has Virgil over to his place, and Virgil eventually questions Richie about this himself. Richie is hesitant and kind of dodgy about the whole thing, but eventually he's convinced into letting Virgil stay over for one night. That night eventually comes, and at first, everything is fine. That is until Richie's father comes home early from work, and let's just say he's not too happy to find out that Virgil's in there.
This is my friend Virgil. Remember, I told you about him.
Not nearly enough.
What do you mean by that?
Initially, Virgil takes the coldness from Richie's father as him just being tired and annoyed from a long day of work. But it's after some dog whistle warnings at dinner that Virgil eventually hears the bombshell reveal straight from the racist horse's mouth.
And now I see why Richie acts like a hood, Maggie. That kid's a bad influence. All his kind are.
Keep your voice down.
It's bad enough I gotta deal with them all day long. Now one of them's in my house.
What did you say, nigga?
Sad, confused, and a little embarrassed, Virgil leaves early that night to avoid any more potential awkwardness. This prompts Richie to blow up at his father for his bigoted ways, and he ends up running away from home. And I know this moment is supposed to be really sad and dramatic, but the dialogue just makes it kind of hilarious at the same time.
Well, you got what you wanted, Dad. My best friend's gone because of you and your stupid racism. I hate you!
Hey!
It's important to note that Richie's father is a cop, and anyone who's watched Static Shock before would most likely know that the area that Virgil and Richie live in is a lot closer to Gotham than it is to Metropolis, if you catch my drift. Being a cop in a relatively safe city can be enough of a stressful job. Being a cop in a city with a high crime rate and half the criminals are genetically mutated freaks with superpowers? Yeah, I'd be sleeping with a bottle and a pistol by my bed every night. This, of course, is not an excuse for racism or bigotry, though. Richie's father is a depressingly accurate depiction of many real cops in the world today. Men and women who are so entrenched in the crime and corruption of the cities that they live in that they start to see all people as perps and perps to be. Compound that mindset with a deep-seated sense of race-based resentment and superiority complexes, and you get Richie's father to a T. I've always believed that the worst thing about racists and bigots isn't necessarily their beliefs, but the fact that they'll most likely pass those beliefs down to their children and/or other people that are easily influenced. I know a good number of people who were, unfortunately, raised by racist parents. Luckily, though, most of them ended up denouncing their parents' horrible ideologies and learned to be their own people. But I also know a good number of people who grew up to be just like their racist parents, and they continued that cycle of ignorance and misplaced resentment towards others. I don't know what it's like to grow up with racist parents, and in a world that continues to progress towards inclusivity and diversity, it's gotta be a pretty traumatic and crushing experience to suffer through whether you're successfully indoctrinated or not. The rest of the episode is basically a wild goose chase looking for Richie between Virgil, his father, and Richie's father. Along the way, Virgil convinces Richie that their friendship is too strong to end over what his father thinks of Virgil and other black people.
You and me, we've been through too much together to let this get in the way. We're always gonna be aces, no matter what.
For real?
Meanwhile, Virgil's father is slowly but surely able to convince Richie's dad that he's a certified racist idiot, and if he ever wants to truly connect with his son, he has to change his ways.
You've got a terrific son. One of the best and brightest around. And because of the way you are, you'll never really know him. Richie ran away from you a long time ago, Foley. And who can blame him?
Is the whole episode a little cheesy, and does Richie's dad change his ways a little too easily? Yeah, but f*** you, they only had 21 minutes. One of my favorite aspects about this episode is that despite Richie's father being a racist dumbass, Virgil and his father still treat Richie's family as equals. Virgil doesn't shun Richie because of his father's ideology. And Virgil's father doesn't refuse to help find Richie just because Richie's father thinks he's superior to him in his race. It's a kind of shoehorned-in message, and it's very reductionist of just how complex the issues of racism in America are. But this is a show that was targeted towards 6 to 12-year-olds, and as a 6 to 12-year-old at the time, I can confirm that the message was definitely received. And despite all of the other episodes, characters, and plot lines that I've forgotten from Static Shock, I've always remembered this episode and the beautiful way that it illustrated such an important message. This episode, and many others like it, perfectly exemplify what made Static Shock both a great character and a great series. It's the kind of show that every kid back in the day should have watched, in my opinion. And I wish there were more shows like it today. Shows that aren't afraid to tackle social issues head on and have enough tact to do it tastefully.
Well, you got what you wanted, Dad. My best friend's gone because of you and your stupid racism. I hate you!
Well, for the most part. Great messages, multi-layered heroes and villains with cool and evolving powers, an extremely likable minority protagonist who could serve as an icon for millions of people across the world, and a direct connection to Batman, Superman, and all the other titans of the DC universe. Kinda makes you wonder why DC has never bothered to make a Static Shock anything since the show ended 20 years ago. Seriously. Can we get a Static Shock anything? We got a fucking Blue Beetle movie with George Lopez in it before we got a Static Shock limited series or a Blu-ray movie or anything. Don't even play my outro. I don't want to hear no soothing ass, Charlie Brown ass music. I'm not chill review right now, okay? I'm angry review right now. DC, do the right thing. Make a goddamn Static Shock movie or series. For once, just please do something right and bring back Static. It's been 20 years, man. I'm gonna go vibe out to the Little Romeo opening theme song to calm myself down. I'll talk to you in the next one.